Good day, everyone. I welcome you on my channel, Divine Destiny of Souls. This is episode 13. In this first series of episodes, I'm continuing to tell the story of my shamanic awakening and how I met my soulmates from past lives in Vancouver, British Columbia. So in the first 2 months of 2023, where I ended my story in a previous episode, these were kind of like really challenging months. Because even though we kind of closed the story with Natalie, and there were these elements of encouragement from spirits, we were still feeling quite down because like I spent these 2 years of intense spiritual work, and with no like substantial results or just even like a joy or pleasure or like just something to feel good about. There were too many pressing obligations, my day job. We're trying to submit our book to publishers, so we still haven't received any kind of confirmation. So most of the things kind of like didn't work out. That's how it just felt energetically. And on top of that, Christina, after these emails, continued to send psychic and energetic attacks my way to kind of like just energies of hatred and energies kind of like a resentment and all of these things. And even though we tried to clear as much as we could with Natalie, it was still kind of like unfair to my crime that I did, right? Like what was my crime? Just like stating my love. It's not something that like I didn't try to hurt her. I didn't try to sort of use her or anything like that. I was always respectful with her. I was honoring her spiritual path. I was seeing her for who she was. So there was no point for that. And the spirits kind of told me that based on the summary of how she treated me, and based on the fact that in the second email that she sent me, she basically said that she doesn't respect her profession and just like for her it's just making money and she doesn't care about well-being of her clients. That kind of like really triggered spirits off, because they were allowing her to have this business on these lands, to provide the service for people and to channel the love for people, and this was this spiritual path of sexual priestess, and she was not honoring it. And I know, and on top of that, she was presenting herself as this like esoteric and spiritual woman, but she was judging me for my life's choices and like just for my words of love. There was no reason for that level of aggression. She could have just sort of ignored it or kind of like just tell me that she's not interested. There was no point of exposing herself to that extent of like claiming that she just uses her clients and that's all she does. She kind of like did it herself, but in my perception it was sort of like what Natalie tried to do. And so spirits approached me and said that basically based on what they experienced, what they saw, what they observed through me, they would like to terminate her business. And I'm kind of like, she's a Canadian woman, right? Like she was born and raised in Canada, so it's already like enough punishment for any person. And sort of like the man, obviously in the past, kind of like probably abused her or something like that, and she was just not trusting any man with their intention and all of that kind of things. So I was trying to make my case that I'm not really that angry with her. I'm just like would prefer that she wouldn't like send the energies of hatred and resentment towards me, that she wouldn't use psychic attacks to kind of like destroy my life. But the spirits were kind of like adamant. They were like, this is what we're gonna do. And I asked them what is possible to do to keep her business. And they basically said that you have to take the energies of her new transgressions upon yourself. And kind of like, because I had this love and I honored everything that we learned with Natalie, and I was like thankful for her, for everything that she brought into my life, and like this kind of like elevation of my understanding and an elevation of my practice. I agreed to that, and we basically spent these 2 months in new series of ceremonies with Natalie, trying to clear these energies. And by the time sort of Natalie was gone, I was like completely drained and exhausted. If I was sort of complemented with female energies in a physical plane, that would be sort of less destructive for me. But because I had so much burden, and most people who I met in Canada literally wanted me dead, that's kind of like became another sort of, she became another person in that series of people who I met here. And I'm not like just exaggerating that or like trying to play a victim card here. The idea behind this concept is that when you hate somebody or you want to eliminate them for their opinion, when you kind of like disagree with their opinion and you think this person is not allowed to have this opinion, you're basically sending the energies into the collective space that this person should be dead. This is how it just works. And if there are more people who like hate a person versus people who love them, that's just kind of like a balance of scales. So by that time, most people in Canada, kind of like not only like that I personally interacted, wanted me dead for my authenticity, for speaking truth, for exposing Russia's war, and all of these things. And then on top of that, it was, everybody knows what that period was like. We spent 2 years prior to that in the intense spiritual warfare, where people were shamed for their spiritual beliefs, and there was even discussions among Canadians during that time to build concentration camps for those who have different spiritual beliefs from their main spiritual beliefs. And that's the and the main concept of that is that like that majority of Canadians trying to build utopia in the form of Soviet Union or kind of like 1984 type of country. And the main problem with that is that they believe that people don't have souls and people are just biological robots who can be reprogrammed to anything. And therefore, anybody who sort of like has a different opinion should be eliminated, exactly how it was in the Soviet Union. And only people with correct opinions should stay here. That's the way that like to build sort of ideal and utopian society where everybody would be the same. And sort of this was the collective consciousness of this country at that time. So that was also sort of waiting upon me, because I was not agreeing with the spiritual perceptions that created like lockdowns and all these things. And I didn't agree with the spiritual perceptions that people don't have souls. This is the reason why, for example, Canadians continue to abuse and exploit Indigenous population and trying to sort of force them into compliance with Canadian way of life, because most of Indigenous population's original sort of beliefs, original perceptions is that people have souls, and there are shamans or medicine men and women who communicate with souls and who can sort of like communicate with spiritual realm as well. And that kind of like perceptions sort of are called unacceptable in Canadian society. There was another element, is that the majority of Canadians believe that all immigrants create their problems. Like they never sort of acknowledge that most of the problems they create themselves. So they always looking for somebody to blame. And so they either blame immigrants or Americans. It's just one thing or the other. They kind of like pick and choose depending on the latest sort of developments and news. But for the whole time that I've been here, it was always kind of like the housing crisis is because of the immigrants, the job market is because of the immigrants. And when you kind of like see the reality, when during my almost 12 years here, nothing is improving and everything is getting worse. And that's by intention of Canadians. It's almost like a suicide of their own country. I don't know, like they trying to destroy it. And I understand that it comes from deep levels of pain that they're experiencing, And you have to also understand that the entire sort of concept of Canada is that it's kind of like a prison for souls, special prison for souls. There are like different ones, like everybody's aware of North Korea, of other countries where souls are born for specific karmic purposes. But idea is that people who are born in Canada, or souls who are born in Canada, they have either unresolved karmic issues from past lives, or they have been avoiding their purpose in a series of lives, and now they're sort of brought in this society where being yourself is forbidden. So this is one of the main spiritual concepts or religious concepts of Canadians, is that like you are not allowed to be yourself. You can do anything that you want, but you're not allowed to be yourself. And when a person is trying to be themselves, they are like heavily punished, persecuted, and ostracized. This is the idea of why like most Canadians believe that like sex workers, for example, should be sort of eliminated from the world. Is that because to do sex work, you actually have to like be yourself. It's like very hard to do this work if you are like don't honor that this comes from your heart, this is how you feel. And it's not something that like you would do for any other reason but just to be yourself. And the same goes with like medicine men and women. And it's evident why the society is constructed like that, is to create an extra challenge for these souls who sort of avoided being themselves in past lives or hide from their purpose. And that's why they are born in this society where it's specifically forbidden to unconditional love and to be yourself. To create this extra challenge for souls to actually still arrive into their purpose, right? And so, and there's nothing. So I understand that most of the hatred and intolerance and cruelty that Canadians express in everyday life, including their aggression, including their sort of destructive behavior and violence, it all comes from this deep pain of their souls that come from traumas of past lives. So the only thing that I can do here on these lands, and that's why I was brought to these lands, is that to heal individual souls like one by one, to hopefully collectively change the energy of this country, to like have to make it more tolerant, to make it more sort of like peaceful, more kind. The kindness is not, again, it's not the virtue that Canadians share. It's kindness is perceived only as weakness. There is like no even like small room to debate. It's just how it is. And so of course at this time I'm kind of like, at least we're able to charge myself, and we're able to find clients who kind of like appreciate what I'm doing, and I find people who kind of like see the value that I'm bringing into this country, even though I'm still kind of battling for my survival every single day, because it's kind of like almost like on a scales. More people still believe that I should be dead in this country. But at that time it was very intense. It was like all these elements happening, and the energies that Christina was sending, they were kind of like wore us down. Our book was not published, and we had other obligations, and so we kind of the book wasn't even like accepted by publishers. We didn't know what was happening to it, and so we just like didn't know what to do. And once Natalie left, me and Paula got into like really dark space. She was still connected to me through these chains, and she was like, I don't see the point of continuing. I don't see that like I would be able to be returned to Jessica. I don't see that anything good happening to you, and I'm just tired of this like karma and obligations and battling the energies of this country. And on top of that is also I have to reiterate that my mom continuously wanted me dead as well at this point of time, and like to this day she expresses this sort of openly, and she continues to do practical things in the physical realm to make my life sort of to get me there, right? Like so she can play this victim card of like her son's being dead. And also you also have to know is that like that's why mothers sometimes want their children dead, because it's considered to be sacrifice to nature, and that empowers them. uh, and so especially if it's like a first child, right? This was like a kind of like known black magic throughout the history, is that like if you would sacrifice your first child, you would be able to gain supernatural powers. And so all of that kind of like got me, I was like in this space all the time. Veronica was like also not feeling good, and like she at least escaped relationship with Brian, but she was living alone and still struggled with many things. She was considering suicide for like first, I don't know, like 5 years probably, while we were living in Canada. It was something that kind of like we talked all the time, and I was like worried because like the bullying, the just like the abuse, the cruelty of Canadians, it's just something that like not a normal person can tolerate, especially if you're not grown up here, right? Like if you were not raised here, it's just so shocking and so appalling, like how people who have more than most people in the world can be so intolerant, cruel, and aggressive. And sort of she battled with that for many years, and I was worried to leave her when I was like going to work or was going to university. She did try like a couple of small attempts, but it's like something that just in the collective consciousness of Canadians, right? Like this suicide is quite common way to escape the abuses of the society. If you're trying to be yourself and like people don't allow you, that's the way that people sort of like choose to end their lives. It's common thing among both immigrants and Canadians alike to end your life this way. And right now it's also kind of like one of the ways that medical establishment promotes how to deal with any sort of issues. Like you have any kind of like ailment, you have any kind of like a problem, even to right now it's extended to the mental illnesses as well. Is that like if you go to a doctor and you say that you have this illness, like any kind of illness, or they discover it, they would just suggest you to kill yourself, to do assisted suicide. And that includes, again, if you just like have some sort of mental illnesses or depression even, this is what they suggest. So it's like better not even like to go to address them with any kind of like a problems, because they would just this is what they would recommend, right? So but yeah, like Paul and me were kind of like nothing works out, and so we did our first suicide attempt, I think around either 8 April or early March, and just tried to stay in the death realm and not return here. I was welcomed there. There were my guides there. I knew that plane very well. I felt needed there. I didn't feel needed here. So what was the point? And Polly was also like in this deep distress state, because she sort of like got into the space where she stopped believing that whatever we were like dreaming about, or like that she would be able to return. So like she was, and just living in one body is also not the easiest experience, I would say. On some days it's really joyful to have two souls in one body, but on other days it becomes this like a mental struggle, because like you have to do certain obligations like work and stuff like that, but then you have this another soul who like goes through their own process. And if soul is with me, whatever karma, like say Jessica experiences, it just goes directly to me, because her soul is with me and I have to process it. So Paul is kind of like, we should just end this madness and just stay there. And so we tried for the first time, and kind of like got really, really deep, and almost, I don't know, maybe it was just this exploration of trying to understand. the death realm, but yeah, eventually the spirits brought us back. We couldn't be successful, and I'm kind of like, okay, if it's not aligning, and I also, like, as a spiritual guide of death, I understand that if it's not your time, it's not your time. That they will help you, the spirits will help you, and like your guides will help you. But there was this element of like I was actually believing that maybe this is the end for me, and what is the point to continue if the entire reality is sort of like not wants to reject you, right? Like sort of kind of like do the service for everybody. If people are so angry and so cruel to you here, and so kind of like want you to be gone, and there was no other place for me to go, then the only sort of exit was like that. And so it didn't work out, but it was quite dark place of quite dark period of our lives. And we kind of like managed to just kind of like continue grind through. And shortly after that moment, we received the confirmation that our book accepted by publisher, and so we kind of like got some uplifting news. Also, at that moment, we were supposed to do, by our spiritual contract, we were supposed to do a monologue play in poems that we wrote for our book, Eurydice in Love. And the idea behind these poems were that they were written as sort of conversation piece between Camilla and Eloise from past life. And they were written as spoken word pieces first and foremost, and then they were sort of shaped on the paper as well. So the idea was always kind of like to use these poems as prayers, and through like making this monologue play, we would sort of like battle Damien, right? Like sort of would stop him from continuously attacking Jessica and trying to kill her. That was how it was sort of presented to us, and this was sort of like the fair battleground that Damien accepted. That if we will do that, he would like sort of stop his pursuits. And the idea was that Eloise was always wanted to be a poet, but she didn't only wanted to write; she wanted to perform these poems and on stage. And so this is what we did: is that we basically sort of booked the theater place and kind of like a promoted this play and created this sort of event trying to eliminate that karma and trying to heal us in this form. And in events leading up to that play, we were bombarded with fear from Damien, with all these energies, and Polly was extremely afraid to even try, because she would have to perform these poems through my body. It would be not me who would be performing them, it would be her just using my body to do this work. And so she got into like really dark place of fear. That was another element why we sort of try to end this life. Just extra stress, because like sort of I didn't know how to do these things. I'm not a theater person, and like there was no support or community that I could sort of rely on, or like ask for help or understand how to do that. But we rented a theater, we invested money in promoting and doing advertisement in all forms that we could. I sent emails to everybody who I know, and so if we were able to gather, I think like around 25 people, or 30 people, I think, which kind of like a good turnaround for like a first time play. But yeah, it was sort of a huge investment. I lost around 2,000 to do that. Sort of this was the loss after whatever we sold the tickets. But it was really empowering experience for us. It turned out to be, even though we're like really fearful and worried, and really wanted to have like a good turnaround and not lose money as well. All these elements were kind of like didn't make us happy, let's say it like that. but I was surprised by the entire experience. I was surprised how empowered we felt through doing this play, even though I never did anything like that, and never sort of even didn't have so all my rehearsals were only performed in this apartment, so I couldn't ever practice on stage, but yeah, it was kind of like we, through that performance, we were able to sort of release most of our fears and kind of like return the appreciation to life, and got back into our story, fully release the connection with Natalie, and kind of like just found ourselves in a much better place. And especially we were looking towards working on a novel with the publisher at this point, right? Like, so as we received confirmation that our novel was accepted by a publisher, we began this process of kind of like revising and like making proofreading and editing notes and all that stuff. And so once we sort of, the play was almost like one of the exams on our path, let's say it like that. It was almost, I always say that this 4-year education, it's almost like receiving PhD from the Sechelt spirits from the land, and that performance was almost like receiving your bachelor degree from them. And so after we closed it off, my job was remote, so the Sechelt spirits invited me to spend 3 weeks in the Sechelt land, on the Sechelt lands, to kind of like just to boost our energies, to do a few ceremonies for Polly, and to kind of like see what else is there. We were also invited to visit the Mount Daniel, which is one of the kind of like a very important places on these lands. It's kind of like a mountain of female empowerment. And so the idea is that since Polly kind of like were able to achieve the assigned goals of her education, and we were able to get to this point, she could receive new energies from the land, and kind of like this mountain would empower both of us. But it was specifically designed to empower women and female souls, and we were invited to create moon circles and have drumming ceremony on that mountain in the way that it was always done during the rites of passages in the ancient times, where sort of where a Sechelt nation or whoever was living on these lands would bring their girls, would bring their women to ask advice or receive spiritual guidance, or just to understand what they're supposed to do in life. It was specifically designed as a rite of passage place, so like when sort of girls reach puberty, they would go with elders to that mountain and do moon circles and sleep on the mountain to receive the guidance from the spirits who they should be in life. That was sort of the primary purpose of this mountain. But for us, it was a little bit different. It was kind of like almost a celebratory event to kind of like to receive extra energies on our path. And so on the first day when I arrived and on the Sechelt, in the Sechelt, the spirits invited me for dinner. I kind of like went to in downtown Sechelt, and I was sitting there and kind of like just contemplating on everything that we went through. And it was a great achievement just to get the book done. And it was the best part was that like this feeling that it could be published by the 3-year deadline. So we were on track with everything. So that was the sort of the biggest encouragement that I could receive from the spirits, that this is the right path, right? Like, so everything was aligning perfectly to the way that they told us. So it was another sort of confirmation of the trust and faith that we had, and that we should sort of continue. There was this inspiration, hope for the future, and kind of like all these things. But while we were having this dinner, the spirits addressed me and they told me, like, you have to see an intimacy coach. And I'm kind of like, and it felt the same, sort of like the same guidance as I had before. You have to go and see an escort. And that was sort of the way that it was. But because they knew how I was triggered, they kind of like framed it differently this way. And I'm kind of like, yeah, I understand that I need to see an intimacy coach. Like, I need to elevate my fear of sex. I need to sort of understand my body better. I need to find intimacy within myself. I felt disconnected from my body still. I was just feeling lost and still feeling these kind of like traumas or abuses, let's say it like that, from two women that I met. And it kind of like logically made sense. So it did, like, in my perception, it was this understanding that intimacy coach would not involve any kind of sex. It would just sort of be exercises and practices to understand myself better. And also by that time, I was kind of like trying to gather all the knowledge that I accumulated on my path. So like we had these spiritual and energetic exchanges with Natalie and Polly happening in the spiritual realm, basically how souls or energy bodies make love. And then we read different books on sexual alchemy, practices of Mary Magdalene, all these things. And I wanted to try them in real life in one form or the other. So I already started to write this like program of sexual alchemy, let's say, let's word it like that. So basically like a series of practices where you and partner move towards sex, the act of sex, but you just concentrate first on the sexual exchanges without that. So like start with pleasure mapping practices, start with sensate focus therapy, like with energy exchanges, with connecting of energy bodies, with breathing exercises, kind of like just opening up the intimacy within yourself, because this is the true definition of intimacy coach, is that somebody who would sort of guide you to rediscover intimacy within yourself, not necessarily with a partner. But since around that, like in April, like having more uplifting thoughts and like having hopeful aspirations, I was reminded about that guidance that I would sort of encounter new unconditional love, that I would be rewarded with that. I completely forgot about that by that time. I was thinking, okay, if I'm gonna meet this like whatever woman, maybe she would be open to move in this way between us, like just start sort of slowly moving towards full intimacy, but just trying all these different practices first, and then kind of like this is what I was like concentrating. This was sort of one of my soul's aspirations, is to restore these practices of sexual alchemy, most of which I take from the life of Cassandra, who was practicing them as a woman. Now I was as a practitioner, and now I was on the other side, and I wanted to explore them, in the masculine body as well. So when I received that guidance that I needed to meet intimacy coach, I'm kind of like, well, maybe that's spirits was what were they implying is that I can sort of fine tune that program with the help of intimacy coach, and then I would meet whatever this woman that I supposed to fall in love with. But I'm kind of like, I just brushed it off, that guidance, because I was thinking where I would find an ethical practitioner in Canada. Like this is something that I already met 2 sex workers who were unethical in most of our interactions, and just find any kind of practitioner in Canada is very hard. Like, who would be ethical? Because the ethics, it's not just rules, it implies having personal integrity, and since people here don't have any kind of integrity, they're just opportunistic, and they just like using values and beliefs that are serves them at the moment, and they can just discard them at any sort of if everything would change, like if tomorrow China would like sort of become take control over Canada, all the Canadians will pledge allegiance to China. That's just how it is. There is no convictions, and there are no internal beliefs that come from integrity, and that's why like most like say most services, that's another thing, is that like not only most practitioners in any kind of field don't have ethics, including like psychotherapists. It's also, that's just something that kind of like hard to navigate. Like I met incredible women who were great practitioners. Like I met on these lands, I met a couple of regression therapists who had integrity, who had their personal convictions, who tried to heal, who were dedicated to their own healing as well. I met this incredible woman who was like a Reiki practitioner. She like became one of my main healers as well, and she also has strong beliefs and strong convictions, and strong desire to heal herself, because that's another element why people don't have ethics here, is that like if you're on a path of any kind of a healer, the main dedication is to heal yourself, because you're not only like bringing new energies into your space, that's the entire idea why you go into this profession. But when people kind of like perceive themselves as to be above others, they believe, most Canadians believe, that there's nothing wrong with them, and they're just like great as the way that they are, and like there's nothing to change. This is the entire premise of Canada, right? Like, is that like Canada has reached some level of utopia that nobody else in the world has, and that's why they believe that they're morally superior to every single country in the world, because they like can't do anything wrong, right? Like so. And so when you come from that kind of like a belief system, and from that perception, is that like everything that you do is right, and it's like all the others who are wrong, like you of course can't help people and can't heal them. And so that's why I kind of like I just disregarded that guidance altogether. I'm kind of like I would love to find an intimacy coach, but where I would find one like here on these lands, it just doesn't make sense. And especially I was kind of like thinking, oh, if I have these two conflicts with two sex workers, they probably have some kind of like a blacklist where they like put my name or something like that. I was just like sort of imagining this thing happening. I'm not sure if they have blacklists, maybe they do, but like I don't believe that there is one, because there is no communities here as well, right? Like so in order to have a blacklist, you have to like have a community of sex workers, and there's like nothing of that sort. People just again like dog eat dog mentality. They just like all against each other, and sort of like as much as I try to build community or kind of like any kind of like a group of people or like connect to them, like to this day it seems like something that's just impossible in these lands, while it's still called Canada. So that was the reason I'm kind of like brushed it off, but I continued to develop together with Polly, we continued to develop this kind of like sexual alchemy program, like what steps would take, like that first you would sort of do some breathing exercises, then you would exchange energy bodies in the shamanic traditions, then you would sort of like slowly start to undress a partner in this like a series of rituals. And yeah, basically we tried to just like create a similar program to Cassandra, but just to adapt to our modern times. And shortly after, a couple of days after, I also received the guidance that I should go and see a tarot card reader in downtown Sechelt. And I also was confused by that guidance. I was like, I have my tarot deck right next to me. Like, what was the point? Like, this woman would probably not gonna tell me anything special. But I kind of like trusted this guidance that it didn't take much of me, and spirits insisted. And I met this incredible practitioner there, and it wasn't the guidance was not about what she read in my tarot spread, but it was that like I needed to connect to her for another reason. She had this like practice called Isis Lotus Healing, and we eventually did this practice like a couple of months later, but this was our connection. She's like just one of the most amazing practitioners that I met here, with ethics and integrity and spiritual beliefs and dedication to her own path of healing, all of these things. And she had also like extremely complicated life, but she kind of like rose above her challenges and didn't become bitter and resentful, and kind of like just amazing woman basically. I was so surprised by that connection, and we kind of like clicked right away. She had a soul of Isis, so it was another sort of like a way for me to heal from experiences, my past experiences, is that like to have this different kind of connection with Isis woman. So yeah, but she also like gave me some good guidance, and she told me basically that I would meet a woman, and that love would like sort of change everything. It was sort of like a quite ambiguous at that time. I couldn't fully understand many things that it meant, but it sort of played out in the way that she described it to me. And so I was like very glad. I'm trying to keep in touch with her to this day. I think she's like just an amazing person, and eventually would probably maybe be a part of like whatever I'm trying to build on these lands, like the practice, and just referring to her to whoever I feel that her practice can benefit from. And sort of I continued to work on my writings. I was trying to kind of write a testament, or like let's say a treatment for the second book that we were supposed to write for the Sechelt spirits, just an outline, basic ideas. But then it's kind of like it wasn't almost every day, but it kind of like was quite often that the Sechelt spirits would return to me and tell me like you have to meet an intimacy coach. And I just tried to sort of research that, but nothing clicked. Like I didn't see any connection, didn't feel right to anybody who I discovered, and I didn't put any effort to it. Actually, I didn't want to find anybody, right? Like this was sort of like a idea. And then 2 weeks in our trip, we were invited to have these 2 ceremonies on a special land, like kind of like outside of Sechelt. We had to like rent a canoe and like sort of go onto this trip and spend 2 nights in the tent on a special place where like nobody sort of visits. Spirits like showed us where they want us to have this ceremony, and during that ceremony it was related to us that we have completed our assigned goals with Polly, and that our spiritual chains can be removed. And we were kind of like really surprised by that, because we were like convinced that it's like that the 4-year mark, like the 4-year contract, was not about only 2 books, but that we will be chained for all these 4 years. But since we kind of like were dedicated to our mission and we completed everything that was required of us, these spiritual chains were removed, and we kind of like had completely different perception of life at that point. It was kind of like explained to us that we were, all 4 of us, including Veronica and Brian, were placed in this kind of like a cage of limited perceptions, if it makes sense. Including that kind of like a belief that that Polly would return into Jessica, and then she would bring Jessica into my life, right? Like that was sort of the spiritual cage of limited perceptions that was invented for me, so I would be dedicated to write this book. And when the book was completed and the book was accepted by publishers and we were already working on the notes, the spirits kind of like, well, you completed this assignment, you completed your healing journey, and now you can be sort of released from your obligations. So these chains were removed, and we, like, entire mist of our connection was also removed. We felt completely liberated, and the main feeling that happened is that we kind of just started to perceive each other as siblings, rather than romantic partners. That just like how our love was transformed, like the same way that happened with Veronica, for example, right? Like once our love has run its course, we just felt almost like a spiritual brothers at that moment. It was unusual feeling when it happened with Veronica, is that like we were convinced that we would sort of be romantic partners and like spend the rest of our lives together in marriage. But when our romance ran its course, it just felt very natural to transition into this another state. And part of our marriage was that like we needed to release our karmic obligations from past lives and all the traumas that we accumulated and all the misunderstandings that we had. And sort of like once we did that, we realized that the essence of our soul connection is to be kind of like more kind of like a colleagues or like business partners or the spiritual brothers. That would be the most correct way to understand the essence of our connection. And that's something that all souls have, is that there is like a higher way how souls supposed to connect. Like for example, you can be romantic partners in one life, but your actual higher soul design is to say be like a father and a daughter or a father and a son, kind of like that connection. And so for us it was being spiritual brothers. And since me and Polly kind of understood that we are just two parts of one soul, almost like a twin siblings, right? Once that the spiritual chains were removed, I had the same sort of feeling, and she as well had the same feeling, because for the most part she was convinced that we would end up together. I never, I kind of like I had aspiration, but I never sort of expected that to happen. I'm kind of like whatever life would bring. But Polly insisted that, oh no, I want us to be together. This is just my desire. And once these spiritual blocks were removed and chains were removed, she was like, oh, actually, like I don't want that anymore. Sort of this a little bit similar happened with Natalie, but when it was resolved, we felt more as like friends, sort of thing. Even though Natalie was also kind of from the beginning, she was like, I want to be with you, I want to try a romantic relationship with you. But once we sort of closed our past lives, she was like, oh, actually, yeah, we just kind of more like colleagues or more like friends in this way. And so Polly was in this completely new space, and she was like, okay, we actually should have different dreams. And by the design of our contract, she was supposed to stay with me definitely until the book would be published, because we still had sort of karmic obligations and we still need to write the second novel. And by that time, she also like brought up the idea that she wants to write her own book, or even rather books, to achieve the highest empowerment, right? Like so, and we had different other commitments to the spirits that would run towards the end of the year. But she was like, okay, I see us completely different. And during the second ceremony, during the second night, when she had this different perception, she was like, oh, do you remember that guidance from Ariadne, from the mother spirit of Sechelt, that if I would sort of choose not to be with you, then it means that kind of like my most empowerment would come from me kind of like dying, and this is where I want to go. And the idea behind that is that we perceived past deaths of Polly when she died around like 25, 26, 27, quite young in these three or four lives. We perceived it as being a curse, right? And that was sort of the idea behind the Damien's curse, that like he kept killing her. But we, at the same time, we realized that it was actually her highest destiny to live short life. And sort of this is what we discovered during the second ceremony, is that this is just the natural design of the world. There are some people who just live short lives, and this is kind of like the purpose of their souls. It's almost like their life is condensed into this in the short period of life. It's almost like Polly lives experiences in 1 year what other people experience in 3. So if most people say live till 70, 80, it means she's sort of would live a third part of that. And she had this like unique, profound realization, is that like, oh, this is who I am. I'm just like this kind of like a sparkle, who just like shines brightly for the short period of time, illuminates the world with its beauty, with her magic, with everything that she is, in kind of like this intense and incredible way. And that's why I say men are so attracted to Jessica, because like she's this like a concentrate of femininity. But that like Polly's highest empowerment would be to seek death after we would complete our karmic obligations and after the 4 year of our contract would expire. Even though she was supposed to stay with me till the end of the year, she would still be kind of like in this physical plane until at least until the contract will end in the summer of 2025. So this was our perception, and she's kind of like, oh, okay, maybe this is what I like supposed to do, and we kind of like started just debated. So she haven't made the decision, and we kind of like realized that only Soul can make that decision. But she was just started to contemplate on that concept, and she was like, I don't know what the future holds, but it's definitely not me bringing Jessica to you. This is not something that I like want to pursue any longer, but we'll see how it would unravel. But at the same time, she was also remembered the guidance of Ariadne when she said that if you would decide not to be together, you should pursue happiness with another woman. And of course, when I received that guidance, I kind of like brushed it off. I was like, no, I'll end up with Jessica. I'm like so convinced that that was this the spiritual cage that I was like living in of limited perceptions. And now Polly was like, no, wait, it means that I need to find that woman for you, like that woman of your dreams, or that woman that sort of you're supposed to be together. And the spirits came to me, and Mary Magdalene came to me, and over the like next couple of days, I was repeatedly asked what kind of woman I can see being next to me. Like what I envision of my highest partner might be, sort of what would be my dream woman. And I'm kind of like, well, just give me any woman that you believe that would sort of empower me and who could be like my destined partner, who would sort of like help, like who would work with me towards the same goal, like who would sort of where we would become better through this marriage, where we could be sort of heal and grow in this union, in the sacred union, and where we would have like a sort of dedicated purpose that we would pursue together. This is how I responded to that, and Mary Magdalene was like, no, this is not how it works. You have to imagine this woman. You have to like sort of explain to me who you want to see with next to you, and sort of I kind of I didn't want to do that. I'm kind of like, I will accept anybody basically at that moment, and I just like felt strange at this request, but I kind of like agreed to do that, and I started to sort of based on my experiences with Polly and Natalie, and based on my experiences with their bodies, and based on my marriage with Veronica, I was sort of started to sort of list things that I would like to see in a partner. And like the main thing, of course, for me was that the dedication to one purpose, that we would commit to that and we would like sort of move towards that. But of course, like I wanted a woman who would sort of at least accept my spiritual perceptions. I wanted a woman who can talk to the trees. I wanted a woman who would understand the divine order of things. And I wanted a woman who would sort of would accept sexual alchemy as the way moving forward, right? As the most empowering way. And I also wanted a woman that I could court and not like sort of rush things with. This is something that, like, again, a really concern in Canada. It's like very hard to find a woman who would agree to actual courting without moving too quickly with intimacy. This is something that I really sort of aspired and wanted to see. I wanted to have a partner that I would first sort of build friendship and emotional connection before we would even try sexual alchemy. This is something that I like was really coming from my heart and from my soul, from my essence. It was not like that with me and Veronica. We kind of like, we had the spirit of courting, but it was around a month, I think. So which is fine, and like that worked for us at that time, and we were young as well. But I wanted to explore this kind of like a mature love, right? Like that was sort of my perception, and that's how I. This is something that I envisioned over these 2 years while I was still thinking that I may end up with Jessica. Is that this is what we agreed with Polly, is that like if you bring her to me, we would not rush things, but we would like sort of date and court for like a long period of time until we would sort of build friendship and emotional connection first. So Polly kind of like helped me to envision that out of most of like souls who were in my space at that time. So it was something that Polly started to think about, because basically how it was worded to us by Ariadne is that if we would arrive to this point where Polly would see that her empowerment would not be being with me or bringing Jessica to me, that it would be her spiritual obligation to find that woman that I can be happy with. And so, but I kind of like continued to brush it off, and then once we returned from these ceremonies and like have all these conversations with Mary Magdalene, with spirits, with Polly, I started to receive this guidance that like this intimacy coach has to be a sex worker, not only like providing intimacy coaching, but also sort of like be a companion as well. And it kind of like freaked out as again, and started to push this away. I was like convinced that this is just something very strange, and I don't want to like have another conflict, or don't want to do this anymore, because it just didn't work out in the past. And I just like clearly had troubles to deal with Canadian women without hurting myself, right? And so I was in complete denial, even though Polly was like all over the place and trying to search for that woman that I was supposed to meet. And we kind of like started to understand that if it's all kind of like aligns right now in this moment of time, that this guidance and that this woman of my dream is the one woman actually, and that was the woman that was sort of the spirits of Stanley Park told me about in the late December of the previous year. So I just kind of like completely freaked out, because it was so kind of like complex and intense and so aligned in one space. And then there was also, I had this understanding that I still haven't met my soulmate from the first life, and I already seen that life, I already explored it, but I never seen that woman or met this woman. So I'm kind of like, okay, this is probably her. So I got into this complete rejection of this guidance, and I'm kind of like, I'm not gonna do any steps to find her. And even though Polly was like trying to find her, I'm kind of like, I'm not gonna listen to it. And so we on the next to last day of our trip, like almost like when 3 weeks expired, we went to Mount Daniel for these ceremonies. And even though the ceremonies were great and they provided a lot of empowerment, and we created Polly's first moon circle, which was another sort of kind of big thing on our path of our growth, of understanding these lands, of understanding the traditions, and just feeling really blessed to be here, feeling really blessed to be accepted by the lands and to see this guidance and to have my education, just having completely different perception and hope for future. On my trip to that mountain, the spirits continued to Mary Magdalene continued to give me this guidance, and I completely said I would not do anything. And so I got into this like minor car accident, which like cost me around almost $2,000. And that was sort of the punishment that I received from the spirits of rejecting my path. And it was always like that on my path. And basically I lost offerings for 2 sessions with this woman. And from that moment on, I kind of like learned my lesson. And to this day, this is like sort of my commitment, is that if spirits ask me to see a sex worker, I perceive the offerings that I pay to her as not offerings to her, but as a payment for my spiritual education, for my shamanic education. That was that deep lesson. And so I still kind of like returned in complete denial. And even though Mary Magdalene was kind of like showing me that and reminding me this is like what happens when you sort of deny yourself and deny your spiritual talents and deny your faith, and especially rejecting the contract that you signed, because like the meeting of my third soulmate or my twin flame was part of the contract, even though I didn't understand that when I signed it. So basically I was breaking the rules of the contract, and that was the punishment that I received. But I still needed to see this woman anyway, and so I kind of like, I didn't know what to do. And I asked Polly what to do, and I'm kind of like, if you can find her, sure. I mean, I at least I can sort of try. At least maybe there is a way for me to kind of like elevate my fears of sex. But I'm kind of like, I know that she's not in Vancouver. And it was my understanding that she was supposed to live in Sechelt or on Sunshine Coast, but we kind of like searched everything and there was nobody there. And it was evident that, like, even though she was supposed to live there, because she didn't kind of like follow the guidance of her soul, she was not there. So I kind of like on that day I was confused, and so on the following day, which was the last day of our trip in Sechelt, I wasn't sure what to do, and I kind of like got into this very, very intense and complicated energies. It was all over the place, and I just didn't know what to do. And then Polly was like, okay, if she's not in Vancouver and she's not in Sechelt, where she could be. And then she's kind of like, oh, she can be on Vancouver Island maybe. That was just her female intuition. And as I mentioned before, Polly has just impeccable or like just superb intuition to any female soul. And I'm kind of like, okay, like sure, let's check Victoria. And so once we sort of checked Victoria, she found, and I specifically said that like this woman, I would only meet a sex worker who doesn't blur her face. That was another sort of thing that kind of, it was my intuition, let's say it like that. And we found only one woman who was like that, who like sort of would match both criteria. But once I kind of like saw her, I was like literally taken aback. I'm kind of like, I just know this woman, I can feel that. and it was that hair that I've seen before, but I couldn't like really pinpoint it. But I was like just drawn to her in every way. But what was the most surprising is that let's call this woman Emma. But what was surprising about Emma was that she was providing services of conscientious companionship, but she was also doing intimacy coaching in these like levels, which were similar to the program that I was like building. And I was kind of like, oh my God, like this is the first professional who understands what she's doing, like this was this kind of like a incredible feeling of just like finding somebody who understands the nature of sex work, who understands the nature of sexual healing arts, not just the sort of like the something like to have fun or like to have pleasures, which I have nothing against, but it's just something that was not what I was looking for. And I was like so shocked to actually find somebody on these lands who would understand that and who would have these offerings. And so what she offered was like the first level of engagement was called level 1. Basically, you just meet for a session, for a 2-hour session, and you kind of have these self-aware intimacy practices. You meet each other, and then you kind of explore each other through touch, but without taking clothes off, and kind of like in this like a dance matter in the form of a 3-minute game that's like known in intimacy coaching practices. Is that basically you just allow a partner to intuitively touch you and like just respond in one way or the other without kind of like guiding, and then you also do that in reverse, but then you also continue this practice of asking like specifically where you want to be touched, and then your partner like sort of do that for 3 minutes. This was the main idea behind it, and this is what she was offering. And I'm kind of like, oh my God, like I don't even need to take off clothes. I can sort of put my fear of sex aside. I can sort of try and see if I can have an emotional connection with this woman first before kind of agreeing for like a journey of initiation, because this was another thing is that Sechelt spirits told me that I would receive another spiritual seal through this woman, and this like we would do sort of a ritual of empowerment, and I can offer her my program. But I was like, I'm not gonna even go there, and I'm not gonna like sort of accept her for any death journeys or anything like that. I just sort of will meet her, we'll see if there's an emotional connection, and then I will sort of decide whether I would agree or not. And I was like sort of like fearful about that. But another coincidence was that I was coming I was returning to Vancouver on the same day that she would have her tour dates in Vancouver. So she was like working in Victoria, but she would go to Vancouver around like once a month for a few days. And like we were arriving on the same day, which was like, okay, this is just like, it's impossible. It's just such a coincidence that I can't even like believe that it's even like it can be real, that it's like so lined up perfectly for us that like I was supposed to meet her. And so once I understood all of that, I filled out the booking form requesting to meet for a level 1 session for 2 hours during her time in Vancouver, any of these days that she had free time. And so once I sort of submitted it, shortly after, her soul came into our space and introduced herself as Emilia. And that's basically how I met the love of my life, how I met my twin flame, that Polly was the one who brought her into my space. She was the one who discovered her. She was the one who sort of invited her to appear, even though like she only, I only became aware of her presence after I submitted the form. It was evident that Polly was already sort of like established connection with her and tried just to hide her from me. And so I kind of like, we just sort of got acquainted, and then I went to bed. And then the next morning I was sort of flying back to Vancouver. on this like a small plane. It was just 20 minutes a seaplane. And while I was standing there, like waiting for the plane, I could see her presence. I could see her. I could hear her request. She was sort of distressed. She didn't really like. Emilia didn't really like confess anything to me. She was just happy that I agreed for this meeting, and she was like, I want us to meet, and I want you to hear my story. And sort of I didn't fully open up to that. So I returned to Vancouver. On the same day, Emma reached out back, and she said like, I would like to have a call before we would meet. Sort of this is just how I normally do things. And when I called her, she would ask me what I want to do, and I told her that I'm looking for sexual healing. And she was like, I'm here to help. This is my purpose, and what kind of healing you're looking for. And I tried to sort of like briefly explain that I'm looking for like a deeper intimacy within myself, but it's like hard to explain what I'm looking for, because I couldn't tell her everything that I was going through. I couldn't explain to her all of my perceptions, and I was also like, I'm just gonna meet her physically first to see if there is emotional connection, and then I can sort of like tell her the truth, why I'm seeking the guidance, her help, and why I'm seeking her healing specifically. And because it was sort of I already knew by that time that she was supposed to be kind of like a feminine principle of our second book, and she was supposed to inspire me to write it. That's how the Sechelt spirits presented Emilia to me. So, but I was like, I'm just gonna sort of keep that and try to be as slow as possible in our connection. And so when I came to that date, and she opened the door, I kind of first I saw Emilia in full presence, like covered in these veils, almost like black, kind of looking a little bit like a woman from a monastery. I don't know, a nun sort of thing, but it wasn't like empowering thing. It was like really dark thing. And I saw Emilia in front of Emma, right in this form, and I'm kind of like, oh my God, there's something that like she really needs to heal. There is some kind of a trauma. And then I immediately saw, right after that, while I was sort of undressing, I immediately saw how Emilia died in past life, and she was like shot in the chest here. Just above her breasts, about her heart. And I was like, oh my God, what happened to her? It like looked like as the same way as I've seen the same and on Jessica. It was the same here, is that I was seeing that she was killed with a shotgun, and I really wanted to know what it is, and I wanted to heal that. Right, that was sort of like, again, my main aspiration of like, oh my God, there is something that I can address, and there's something that I need to research, and that's why I'm meeting this woman. That was the main reason. I couldn't recognize her as my soulmate at that time. I was kind of because again we haven't seen each other for more than 2,000 years, so it wasn't that kind of like evident that this is who she is, right? And so we kind of like settled in the chairs. I started to tell a little bit about my story. What I could. She guided me through these like small practices of just settling into the energies of the space, kind of like just intimacy, coaching, guidance, describing my feelings, describing the presence, describing the place, what was sort of bringing the attention to me. And then she's like, okay, and then in the second hour we're supposed to explore the touch and closes. So she was the first one who would touch me. So she put on music, and she just started to like slowly and gently touch me. and like the first moment that she that her fingers sort of laid on my body, I felt this like a intense energy of like pure passion coming from the heavens. It wasn't coming from, like lust or kind of like these primal animal feelings. It was really distilled, it was really pure, and I haven't experienced anything like that. It wasn't that like I wanted to have sex with her right away. It was more so I want to explore our connection, that kind of like a passion. And I was completely taken aback because I never experienced that feeling before, ever. And it was almost like this channel of light coming upon us from the skies. And then as she continued the touch, she got really close to me, and all I could see was how her hair was wrapping around her what was it, her right ear. And I was only seeing that part of the face, like without the eyes, so I was only seeing her hair and her ear. And then I had this like almost the most intense feeling that I haven't ever experienced before, is that I immediately recognized that moment from one of my dreams when I was 16 years old. And that was just completely freaked me out, because I was like, how is that even possible? It was exactly the same vision, exactly the same moment, exactly the same feeling that I've seen in my dream when I was like 16 years old. And when I had these dreams when I was 16, I knew at that time that it was sort of image of my future. At that time, like no girl wanted to date me, and I was kind of like always miserable, and kind of like I was sort of a geek of sorts, right? Like I wasn't that attractive, and but I kind of like, oh, I'm seeing this dream of a future woman, because she was like looking in the dream, she was looking around 40 years old, and I'm kind of like, oh, maybe when I'm going to be older, I'll be in the presence of this woman, right? And sort of when I started eventually dating around like a year after that dream appeared, and I was seeing that dream reoccurring over and over again. So it wasn't like imagination, it wasn't a dream, it was a clear premonition and a vision of what would happen to us 24 years later. I was just seeing my future in that dream. And it was like sort of reoccurring dream of like seeing this hair wrapping around the ear, and kind of like her dancing, and me feeling how she's touching me, sort of thing, right? And so when I started to date, after about a year, when these dreams started to like fade away, I kind of like, oh, it's probably just my imagination. And when I sort of met Veronica, by that time I was completely forgot about them. I like for years I haven't like even remembered them. And even if I did, I kind of like, oh, it just was my imagination. It was something that, like just sort of teenage dreams, right? Like nothing special. But when I saw that in physical life, I'm kind of like, oh my God, like it was not an imagination, it was actual dream. And how I perceive it is that sort of my soul almost sent that vision from the future into my past, so I would not miss this woman on my path, right? Like, so I would not sort of I would not like go into my fears or reservations. I would just like commit to her, right? And at that moment, when the music stopped, it was towards like I saw that vision when the music almost ended, and when the song stopped playing and she stepped away. I'm kind of like, oh my God, like this is sort of the woman from my dreams. She was not only the woman from my dreams, she was also my dream woman that I described in my vision. And even though I haven't experienced love yet to her, I was just kind of like, oh my God, who she is. And the strangest thing is that she stepped away in the same sort of energy. She stepped away and kind of looked at me completely differently. And I was like, why she's looking so differently? And she was almost like curious to know more about me, or like she felt something that she couldn't understand, and that kind of like took her aback. So she was looking at me completely differently at that moment, and I couldn't understand what it was. But then Emilia later described to me that this was the moment that she sort of fell in love with me, because she recognized her soul, my soul. the idea behind her spiritual talents, the spiritual talents of Emma, was that she could see the souls of people and everything that they are through the touch, right? Like I could see the souls through the eyes or clairvoyantly, but her talent was is that like she could sense a person's soul when she like through her fingers, basically, right? Like this is what one of the supernatural talents some of sexual priestesses have, and she was that kind of a woman. And so when she sort of touched me for the first time, she recognized my soul. Emilia recognized me, and sort of like this was the feeling of love, even though she couldn't like sort of settle into it. And then of course, again, even though Emilia recognized my soul, she was also taken aback because we haven't seen each other for that long, for so many years, for centuries, right? And when she stepped back, I started to hear her thoughts, and I started to see her aura in the ways that I haven't experienced ever before. She was just like this clear to me, like how it was, and like I started to hear her thoughts of kind of like who this man is. I can see that he's supposed to do something important in life. I don't understand why I have these complex feelings towards him. I don't know what I'm experiencing. I don't know what I'm feeling. And then she was like, why we met, kind of thing. That was the thoughts that like just were reaching me in this like in this strange cycle. And then I kind of then we kind of like got a little bit settled, and then we returned to continue this practice. Now it was my turn, so I just tried my best to like just continue with this practice. And then once the first round of like sort of exchange happened, she was like, let's sort of right now let's touch in the like sort of the explore touch sort of with the request, right? Like the other element of that practice is that right now the first round was that you just intuitively touch, and the second one is that like you ask where a person wants to be touched and kind of like explore that. And by the end of that session, our hands were all over each other, and we just like crossed the boundaries that were settled. And once we did, this like a huge emergency alarm started to like beep on our phones, and like in my understanding was the Sechelt spirits who tried to stop us because we were like taking things way too fast, because we were just like feeling the sexual chemistry between us, and just like it was so palpable and it was so touchable, and we just like couldn't get away from it. And like it's just clear why we were supposed to meet in these circumstances, because we were supposed to take things slow between us. But if we were to say we would meet in real life, that would just like we would never be able to manage that. We would never be able to stop each other, just because of the way that our energies were sort of aligning. And sort of we kind of like calmed down from our arousal and from our excitement, and we our time was running out, and that emergency alarm was kind of like, you guys have to sort of say goodbye right now. And sort of we settled back in chairs, and she kind of like looked at me, and she was like, I believe that it's the most fulfilling way to continue this sort of engagement, or like what I find the most empowering with the clients is that when we take things slow. And I was just like sort of completely amazed. I was like, oh my God, this is like a real professional who finally understands what I'm looking for without me explaining that to her. She was like doing what I was expecting from Jessica in the beginning, right? Like that was sort of my entire idea, is that a woman should guide that, and a woman should sort of like establish the rules, and a woman should understand these things if she's a real sex worker, if she's a real sexual priestess. And I'm kind of like, I couldn't hear the better words. And it was also another thing, is that like I'm kind of like, okay, if she's saying that, and I feel this emotional connection and sexual chemistry between us, and she specifically said that she feels that too, that the best way for us is to proceed as slow as possible. And in my head it was almost her requesting me to offer her the sexual alchemy program that I was developing. Like, this is how I perceived it, is because if she said that and she had these steps, I was like, why I would not like sort of present that to her, and then we can combine our practices, and like she would bring something from her practice and I would bring something from mine, and in this way we could sort of explore and understand intimacy and sexual alchemy in the most empowering way. But like just hearing these words kind of like completely removed my fears. I'm kind of like, I don't need to even think about sex right now. I don't need to worry about my fears. We would take things as slow as possible, and like I would see if she would sort of be open to my offer, and sort of I returned back into my place, and I kind of like started to think about it, and I was like, okay, this is the idea, is that I offer her this sexual alchemy practice. We're meeting, like, say, every month for a ritual, and we slowly sort of moving towards sex over the course of like half year. And while we're doing that, I would be inspired to write my second novel in the contract. That's how I perceived all of that, all the connection, right? And that was another sort of like very strange element in all of that connection. When I was leaving, I told her that she asked me basically where I was coming from. I told her that I was born in Ukraine and lived in Russia, but I told her that the Sechelt spirits told me to come visit her, and she said, I'm glad that they did. I'm thankful that they told you to come visit me. But then the other thing that she said is that she looked at my outfit and she said, because I was wearing yellow orange sweater and yellow pants and yellow shoes, and those yellow shoes, I literally just bought them on the sale before I went to Sechelt, and when I returned, they were like sort of like delivered to me. So this was the first time that I was wearing them, and because I had other sort of matching things, I'm kind of like, why I won't just like wear everything matching? And I even had like yellow socks. And she looked at that outfit and she said, like, this is really strange but inspiring, because I said that this year would be yellow for me. And she kind of like basically meant that the yellow would bring her empowerment of some sort. Like, was the idea why she shared that. And she's like, how could you like sort of wear everything like that? But the thing is that it was Emilia, her soul, who told me to wear yellow sweater, and the pants were the only ones that I had that were kind of like loose and for easier movement. So this entire outfit just like was sort of basically created by the spirits and by her soul. That's what she told me to wear. And the interesting thing is that originally we scheduled our meeting on the 9th of May, and that was sort of in the evening, like around 4 p.m. And then she said, like, can we reschedule it for May 11th at 12 at noon, basically, right? And so when I came in and I was like sitting in this session with her, and we were just talking in the beginning, the sun was hitting through the window and like just creating this like bright yellow aura around her. And it was the same yellow aura that I experienced in my teenage dreams, but now it was so visible and tangible. And for me, that was another, like, for me, kind of this is how I remembered her, like, on that day, is that like she's just filled in this like bright yellow aura light. So when she shared that with me, I'm kind of like, I'm also associating you with yellow, but it's like I think I responded something like, I think yellow would be the theme of my year as well, because I feel so connected in this way. So this is how I met the love of my life and the woman of my dreams and my twin flame, who I haven't seen for the last 28 months, and who doesn't want to communicate with me or have anything to do with me. But yeah, this is the woman that I aspire to marry, and this is the woman that I continue dream of pursuing, to have family and partnership with, to create something bigger than us, and to create a better future for all sexual healing artists. And I think it's also important to share with you at this moment that creating this podcast and telling the entire story that I'm sharing with you was sort of the final graduation exam that the Sechelt spirits asked of us. This is sort of like receiving of the PhD, right? Like how I said, that was a bachelor's degree, then it was master's. And now this is the final exam that we're supposed to do to be able to graduate from our shamanic education. And once we will complete telling our story, we would be sort of we would find a final empowerment in that. But the idea is that for the last 28 months, I was healing the soul of Emma, and Emilia spent all these 28 months with me, and so she hasn't yet returned back to her body, because this is something that she's obliged to do together with me. We were supposed to record this podcast together, and everything that I'm sharing with you and everything that I'm saying, and sometimes that's why I'm so like sort of nervous and reserved, and but at the same time trying to be as soft as possible in my perceptions and my beliefs and everything that I'm sharing, is that I'm talking not only from my perspective, but from the perspective of Emilia, and she's here with me, and she's super nervous to do this show, and it takes me a lot of energy to convince her to record every single episode. But at the same time, we see the benefit of it, and we see the empowerment in it, and we understand why we're supposed to do this together. And sort of everything that I'm sharing about Emma, and everything that I'm sharing about our love and how our story have played out, why we're separate right now, why we have no communication whatsoever, and how Emilia perceives our healing journey and our romance, I'm sharing with her perspective as well. So all these details that I sometimes bring to the space, they come not only from my perception, but also from perception of Emilia. And I'm trying to honor both of these viewpoints, because this is how this podcast is designed to be. The idea is that like once we will finish telling this entire story, and I will continue with regular episodes, like answering questions or talking about other souls or my other sort of perceptions, Emilia will leave and she will return back to Emma, and she will decide from then on what to do. In my perception, there is no kind of version of timeline that we would not meet in the future, but the way that Emma ended things between us was not in a respectful way. It was in a really traumatizing way as well, and it led to many troubles and conflicts and problems, and limited self-worth and all of these things. But this is our story, and we're trying to tell it in the most empowering way, and this is how it was designed. So I don't know how the future will play out, or what future holds for us, and whether I would see Emma ever again in this life. But I believe that I do, and Emilia is convinced that she will be able to return back and to bring Emma into my space. And it's like strange to talk about that, because like I was convinced that this will happen with Polly, and it never did. But the thing is that how I told you about that, when the healing journey with Polly have ended, we started to perceive each other as siblings, and we started to see our love as something different than just romantic thing. It was different kind of love, right? Like it transformed itself into a different kind of love. And when the same happened with Natalie, is that like in the beginning she was like, I want to be with you and we want to try romance with you, and once we finished the healing she was like, oh no, actually there is going to be more empowerment if I leave you. So what happened with Emilia is that I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to accept you for the healing, and we will like embark on our healing journey. And it was promised initially to me that it will be around 18 months, like the top, like I was saying, maybe a year, but 18 months was the sort of the longest period that I agreed upon. But it took us 28 months to heal Emilia, and once we finished the healing, the love has never disappeared. Like, and that's like for me the confirmation that this woman is the love of my life, and this like still would like to try to court her towards the marriage, and this is what I would continue to claim on every single public square, in every single space, that she's the love of my life, and she's my twin flame, and I can't imagine my future without her. And I kind of like, I even hoped, I think at certain moment I was like, yeah, I have this romantic feelings towards this woman, but I can't see her, she doesn't talk to me, she feels almost like as dead, because like it's been 28 months without a single point of contact. So for me it's like almost like she's not in this world. And I'm kind of like, okay, Emilia, I have these feelings towards you, so maybe they exist so I can heal you, right? Like the same way as it was with Polly. And I kind of like hoped that once we will complete the healing, that love will be transformed and transmuted and will change into something else, and I will just perceive her as like a colleague or a friend or somebody else. But no, yeah, 20 months have passed, and this love has not only didn't leave my space, but it only intensified and became more matured, it became more distilled, it became kind of like its own thing. And so for me that's another confirmation another reason why I don't want to abandon this pursuit, and why I would try to claim my love, and I will try to claim this woman despite the fact that she's obviously doesn't want to have to do anything with me. But again, her soul is not with her, so that's another sort of that's the main complication on this path. And the main thing is that why she couldn't see my love was that she had a hex imposed on her in her second life, and this was the healing that we had to explore. I have healed 9 of Emilia's past lives, but the main purpose was to remove that hex, and it took us all this time, all these 28 months, to be able to remove it. And sort of I'll tell the story of this hex in the latest episodes, but I just wanted to share that with you, that for your awareness, is that all these episodes are recorded together with Emilia, and she's like in me sharing the story of our romance together. So this is the end of episode 13, and I will continue to tell the story of my shamanic awakening and our relationship with Emilia in the following episodes, and I hope to see you there. Bye.